I don't think machinery is sexy. It's an end to a means, or a means to an end. And so to me, though, the project management side of it, the systems, that to me is sexy.
Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork podcast. Here's Jacob.
Welcome back to Verify in Field, everybody. Today I have the owner of Top 40 Woodworks with us, Jenny Gayfer, and they are an AMAC certified millwork company working out of Canada. And I appreciate having you come on and tell us a little bit about your story and the work you guys do, Jenny.
Hi, Jacob. Story work we do, we're probably 80% commercial millwork, architectural millwork, and we do some store fixtures. We've had some contracts that have been upwards of 20 years. Shoppers Drug Mart is one of them. And then we have a very small residential element, mainly just to service builders, because we've noticed builders grow up to be developers. And so we've got some interior designer on our team. And we just find that's really helpful to keep that tool in our belt, that skill set on our team. It's been wonderful having Jackie work with our commercial clients in doing these selections, and also with our shop floor to integrating what works on our shop floor with what the specs are.
Awesome. Would you mind giving me a little bit of your background? Just how did you originally get started in millwork? How did your career start in this industry?
Really, I think the origin is I was a vendor rep in Canada. Here was our decorative surface, so that was also their solid surface, but we also carried board, hardware, and lumber. And so that's actually how I first came across Top 40. They were one of my larger, actually they were my top 3 largest accounts. So over 10 years I came to know them, as well as all the other accounts in my territory. So it was a pretty cool experience to see how each of the kitchen manufacturers, commercial millwork, right down to modular homes, how they used our product and how they ran their business. And it was interesting because at that time I had over 100 clients. And when you walked in, you could either feel that kind of dusty slog vibe, just at it, or you could feel this thrive vibe. And Top 40 was one of the companies that it was just alive, it was progressing. And I became really good friends with the owner. And so that continued for 10 years. Then I took a hiatus for a couple of years. I met someone, married, had a baby, and I ended up taking a life coaching course in Vancouver, actually a 1-year program. And at that time, I realized I was ready to go back to work. And Jack at Top 40 had been trying to get me to work for Top 40. And I knew that I didn't want to come in as an employee. So I actually stayed up all night and wrote a business proposal for him, which was I would be a consultant and I would go out and bring him more national contracts, store fixtures mainly. And, how I did it, where I did it, when I did it was my own business, and he would just pay me a percentage. And that's how I got started. So that was another 10 years of doing that with Top 40. As I was doing that, again, gave me pretty cool perspective about what works, what doesn't. And during this time, I read a ton of business books, always attracted to business. I think the E-Myth was my first business Bible. I guess it was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, decided with my partner, my husband, that we were going to buy an account or buy a company. And Top 40 at that time was I bet you Jack's probably ready to transition out. But it wasn't the first choice. It's a very complicated business. Our first choice actually was cabinet door manufacturer, a vinyl door manufacturer who was ironically another one of my top 3 accounts, and just such a simple formula. Take a MDF, vinyl, smack it together, send it out, like super simple. From a business standpoint, what a great way to keep it simple and get in, get out. And anyway, so that didn't work out. Jack was interested, took time, put the deal together. At that time, I had very intimate knowledge about how Top 40 operated. So I had a lot of opinions about what could be done different. And I just rolled our sleeves up and went to work.
Wow, that's One, that's a very unique story, I would say, for our industry to becoming owner of a millwork shop. And it's very interesting that you had essentially, it sounds like 20 years of gaining insight into this specific business. And like you said, already being able to come in knowing intimately a lot about how it works and how you would change and improve the business, I would assume. And my next question was going to be, was ownership always the goal? But you just described how your career progressed. And obviously it probably didn't start that way, but I imagine when you were still a vendor rep, were there inklings or thoughts or dreams of wonder what if? Or was it something that just once the pieces came together, it made sense when it made sense, and that's when the thought formed of we're going to buy a business?
I think the turning point was when there was a book. It was called Buy Then Built. And the premise was that all these baby boomers were aging out. These very solid businesses with clientele, with revenue. And what a great time to come in and buy those businesses, apply modern business practices to it. And without the risk, like a startup, you have no clientele, you've got a ton of overhead. It's a pretty tough gig. Whereas we looked at it as, yeah, let's buy a business. So Top 40, again, like I said, it wasn't the first choice because I knew it was pretty gnarly. Like to me, it was like an intricate grandfather clock that had so many cogs and wheels, and one had to come into place exactly at the right time the other one did. And if anything was mistimed, it would all be a disaster. And it was daunting, but I also knew because I was out there across Canada and I knew who the competition was. And I knew Top 40's reputation. I knew our internal struggles, but externally, I saw the position of Top 40 compared to what was out there across Canada. And I just realized, you know what? I think we could do this. There was many things that worked for Top 40 that was smart, but there was just a lot of heavy lifting to do initially. Holy cow. The first 2 years, I barely popped my head out of the door of the organization. Like it was a lot of internal restructuring, bringing software in, finding an ERP system, because Top 40 it was started as a small millwork shop. Like literally, if you look at our building, it has 6 bays and it started in that one bay. And you can see the progression of the growth in holes in the wall. And it wasn't laid out with the intention that it would be the size it is today. Right now, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is the shop floor layout, which we're going to address at some point here soon. But it was really that cabin in the woods that as more family members came on, we added this lean-to and a little bit here, a little bit there, but all the while there wasn't really internal plumbing, there wasn't electricity. It wasn't built with the end in mind. Stephen
Mm-hmm.
had 7 habits. It really, and that's been the business ownership element that we brought to it was what is the end? And then let's reverse engineer. What do we need to do? And absolutely first thing off the bat was ERP system. Like there was not even a schedule at Top 40. It lived in one employee's brain. If you got hit by a bus, holy cow, we would have been, oh, I mean, if you won the lottery,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's really interesting also. So, what you said about you had a unique perspective of not only of Top 40 going in, you had a confidence of what you knew, but of the competition and having been a vendor rep and having seen the industry as a whole, because so many owners that I talk to today even are very, I think, self-conscious of, are we the only ones that screwed up? Are we the only ones with these problems? And they don't get that luxury of having seen the competition. And so often I always tell them, hey, it's not just you guys. Like
yeah,
you're not alone. And everybody is a lot more suffering with pains and problems and wounds than that you see from the outside. And so I think that is a very unique perspective that sounds like gave you confidence going in. Of, I know what problems I need to solve, but I also know what we're starting with that's giving us a unique advantage. You also, clearly are very well read and had many years of planning this and thinking about once I get a business, if I were to buy a business, how would I run it? What would be my motivation? And so you mentioned that you came in and the first 2 years were very much focused just inside the four walls of the business, putting, it sounds like, the foundation in place of, okay, what do we need to change? But you also said you're bringing a vision of the end, planning with the end in mind. Can you talk about the struggles there? And obviously, I'm sure there was a lot of like day one blocking and tackling of problems today while also trying to plan for the end of where you're trying to go. What were some of those things that you did in the early days to allow you to start to gain the momentum and the space to work on the future?
The one element that we underestimated was change management. Holy cow. There is no bigger lesson in ownership than understanding the people, the culture, bringing change. You can't just put a ERP system in, change the shop floor layout, and say, okay, everyone go. Oh my gosh, I wish it was that easy. So the number one thing I went to work on, honestly, was our culture. We, at that time when we bought the company, we had about 60 staff, and I personally interviewed every single one. And it took me months. And I think the very shortest one was an hour, and the longest one was 3, 4 hours. And my questions were, why top 40? What's your background? Where did you come from? What's your superpowers? What do you want to be when you grow up? And really came to understand who was working in top 40 and what they saw as the biggest hurdles to success for top 40. And that, I tell you, that was my very first person. I started in our machining bay. It was crazy. Anyway, he was a fellow from the Philippines. And when I asked the staff about him, they said, oh, yeah, like he's a whiz kid. He knows every machine back there. And I'm like, how? And they're like, I don't know. He's just really smart. And I'm like, but how? Why? And so when I finally got him in here and started talking to him, he had a computer networking degree in the Philippines. And prior to working at Top 40, he was working at Tim Hortons in a car wash. And I was like, holy cow, he ended up becoming our lead in that department quickly. So just uncovering the golden nuggets out there and recognizing the staff out there that had a growth mindset versus fixed, and culling the herd. I know that sounds terrible to say, but you get what you put attention to. And that to me was my game plan from day one. Anyone with children and dogs, it's that same, you don't give attention to the negative behaviors and you praise the positive. So praising and bringing more attention and more support to the positive influences in our company and really starving out the negative ones is really, it took time. It's not an instant button. Also, it's very disruptive to fire anyone. That's not the person I am. I wanted to understand everyone first, give them the opportunity to explain, give them the tools to grow and learn, and also with what the expectations were. So it took some time to really make it clear that, okay, this is who we are. We're positive, we're collaborative, this isn't authoritarian, and we're doing this together. And if you're an authoritarian, top down kind of person, I don't think this is a fit. So we ended up losing really ultimately 2 people that it was a conscious, this isn't a fit, but that was enough. And the rest, it's atrophy. That negative behavior, those negative people, it was crazy because at first it was our management team. It was me, but pretty quick, the good, positive, growth-minded people, they take care of negative ones. And it was like watching a petri dish when the good, positive, growth-minded, they themselves, it was self-selecting. They ended up pushing out the negative Nellies, the ones that were just really toxic. And so culture for me is my number one priority as a business owner. Like, we are nothing if we're not doing this together and thriving and enjoying it. That to me is our biggest priority. I wouldn't be doing this. It wasn't gratifying. For me, gratifying is lifting our staff up, watching us grow, proud mama moments. And then it just is a natural process or sequence that the company is doing better. Start at the basics, as you said, the foundation.
Yeah. That's really interesting. You mentioned change management being one of the toughest things. And with that, you talk about kind of culling the herd. And I think I've been a part of companies that have acquired, and I've seen a lot of companies that have gone through acquisitions or mergers. And a lot of times it is much easier to hire somebody new with the new vision than it is because those people ultimately, they didn't sign up to be bought by Jenny. They signed up for top 40 before acquisition was even a thing. And a lot of times I know new leaders struggle with, how do I get the culture? How do I get those people on board with, hey, this is the new vision, the new culture, it may be a little bit different than what the previous owner was driving towards. Not better, not worse, not different. And a lot of times the culling happens just through that it's hard for people to get on board with the new when they signed up for the old and they didn't have a part in that. And you've mentioned, it sounds like very clearly some of the way you went through that was like encourage the positive, the negative will atrophy. But were there very conscious examples of that of, hey, I had to hire somebody new for this role because the other person just couldn't get on board with the new vision?
You know what, the answer is right here. Our executive management team were all working at this company when we bought it, but none of them were in the roles that they are now. And with the exception of one, actually, and that was, man, it feels like it was a rocky marriage that we made it through because it was rocky.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, we didn't actually bring anyone in from the outside. Honestly, production manager, he was a custom worker, and we did something wild. There's that age-old head butting between production floor and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually took the head of engineering and made him head of operations. So suddenly his people were the production floor. And suddenly he found himself on the other side. So that was a really excellent decision and created a lot more empathy and understanding. Our meeting pulse traction is, we have EOS in our company from the book Traction, which is our meeting pulse as an organization is pretty robust. We have a meeting once a week where it's the entire engineering team. And the purpose of that meeting is to get the entire team together, not just have a lead tell the drafter that we did this wrong and this needs to be done then. I insisted, no, it has to be the entire team. And the first 15 minutes is dedicated to site, the job site, as well as production floor, to have their words with the entire team about any struggles, bring pictures, bring work orders, and then they leave the call. But it's so important to come together and align. So short answer is no, we did not bring anyone in from the outside. Yes, that would have been like popping a pill and getting rid of that infection or that headache, but instead we just chose to eat well and exercise and do it the long way. And it feels like it's very lasting and wholesome, if that sounds right. There's easy buttons and there's take a pill for this. We didn't do it that way. And I feel like we're stronger because of it.
Awesome. You've mentioned a couple things that moving into once you got the foundation, things that you implemented, ERP being one of them. I know we just saw you at Innergy Summit. You were the MC this year and talked a lot about how implementing Innergy as your ERP and kind of the business transformation that's come with that. You also mentioned you guys are an EOS company. You've implemented EOS. Can you talk about those? Both, I assume, are new things since you bought the business that you implemented. Which came first and how have those led to transformation in your new business?
We were doing the math. We bought the company April 1st, 2021. I was down in Pittsburgh at the Innergy Summit in June. So April, May, June, like it was mind-spinningly quick. Brought everyone and anyone in our company who's a techie, even video games, I didn't care. And we had about a dozen people in the room. I said, we need an ERP system. We need a software system to run this company, especially scheduling, especially inventory management. We need visible management. I came from, as I said, a vendor, a distributor. Our management, inventory management was so visible. We saw it everywhere. It was live time. Like, to me, it was nuts that we didn't know if we had the material on the floor to build this project. And it felt like driving down a road at night with no headlights, and it's curvy. So visibility was top priority. They went out in the world, came back. Microsoft projects was one option. And the Innergy fellas, there was three of them, they were diehard. They were zealots. They were like, there's no other choice in the world. It's the software. And I was like, energy? And they're like, no. And so I was like, okay. So I looked it up. I saw there was a customer summit, reached out, said, can I come? And I truly knew nothing. I showed up at that summit, had just bought the company. I was so green, it was nuts. And so, anyways, right away, for me, I have to admit that this might not go over so well with a lot of people in our industry, but I don't think machinery is sexy. It's an end to a means, or a means to an end. And so, to me, though, the project management side of it, the systems, that to me is sexy. And when I heard Mark Sanderson talking about Harvard business cases and looking at different companies about how they succeeded and what strategies and what was their hiccups, what was their challenges, that just lit me up. And I do have to backtrack because I definitely observed when I was a vendor rep, and also when for 10 years when I was out across Canada, I knew who we were up against competition wise. It became super apparent that he who automates first wins the race. So I knew that. Fortunately, the owner that we bought from, he had just done a huge automation investment. So we had a store or a material handling system, CNCs, edge banders. So I felt like, okay, that's locked in. And that was one of the reasons I was like, that's why Top 40 is going to win. That's why we're going to buy this company. That's been done. They're, what do you call it? They're loaded, locked and ready to shoot. So back to that, I knew we had the machinery side dialed in. That was good. I knew we didn't have the problem. We had the footprint, we had the growth route, but we didn't have the strategy. We didn't have the scalability. How do you scale when you don't know what your inventory is, or your schedule? Innergy just lit me up. I just recognized instantly these were my people. This education element, this is what we needed. That was going to be the secret to our success. And that to us, for sure, it was the education more than the actual software. Software, cool, but it was the education element that Innergy offered that we could use for our staff to help with that culture, to help with that buy-in, to help with that change management. That was, yeah, that was, yeah, that was worth $1 million. Don't tell Innergy I said that.
And so it sounds like very quickly early on, you said a few months in, you went to the Energy Summit and then made that decision. So do you think that was key that you decided that early on your solution?
Hell yes. Oh, there could have been no other way, without doubt. Go ahead.
And what were the challenges then? Even though you made it very early, obviously you had to implement it, you had to change how you were doing business, you had to get the system implemented. What was that process like?
I think just buying a new company on its own is a real challenge. Try buying a new company with staff that are quite, of course, as you said, like change is challenging. And then, hey guys, let's implement software. When you are scared of software, you don't use software right now. And it's not just software, it's through every aspect of our company. Kiosks on the shop floor, asking the guys on the benches, you're going to be logging into work orders on a screen. That was intense. Oh, and can I tell you the third factor? So first, new company. Second, let's implement an ERP system simultaneously. Oh, and the third thing, this one's a kicker. So again, as I said, I knew the market. I knew who the players were. I also knew who I had been personally chasing from a business development standpoint. And by Within about 6 months, suddenly clients that had been very aloof and hard to try and land were knocking on our doors going, hey, let's do business. And we at that time didn't have Innergy implemented. And so it was like, oh my gosh, come on in. Yeah, sure, we can do this. Because there was a real feast or famine. It was a famine kind of time leading up to 2020, 21, 22, COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just completely just threw the doors open, said, yeah, we'll take your business. We didn't have a schedule, remember? So March 2023, we flipped the light switch, turned Innergy, everything lit up. And we were like, oh my God, what have we done? We were so oversold. It was, I like truly, even now with everything implemented, but there's no way we could do what we did. We have this joke that we survived 2023, like the staff, it was gnarly. It was so gnarly. It was crazy. We were oversold. We were implementing Innergy. We're going through change management. We're restructuring internally. We're trying to figure out what the heck we do. How do we project manage? Because it was the Wild West here. No project managers did the same process. They even cannibalized each other for install contractors or stone. Like I swear to God, they wouldn't tell each other who their installers were in case the other guy stole them.
So you mentioned that you were oversold, but at that point, for the first time ever, you had visibility that you were oversold.
Yep.
And some tools, I would have assumed, of, okay, now what do we do about this? And how do we prevent this from happening again? And so I think that, at least from a lot of the clients I've spoken to and users of Innergy and implementing ERP, and you mentioned this kind of all along, that you didn't have a schedule. And now for the first time you do. I think that visibility of what do we actually have on our plate is a huge piece of what was missing before, right?
Oh, forecasting, being able to look at the scope of work, labor hours, assembly versus custom, understanding having 2 million a month, but a million's outsourced is a big difference from 2 million that's going through our production floor. And even that 2 million that's going through our production floor, what's the split between our case goods and our assembly versus our custom? We've got 5, 6 custom benches. That's times 40 hours a week. We have a limit. And so being able to finally be able to gauge that and feather it and pull work ahead, that was a game changer too. 2024 was nuts because BC Housing was on this mission to get as much housing out into the market. And as we know now, they actually got too much out of the market because now here we are 2026 and everyone's going, what? There's too much. It is flooded. So that's the other challenge too. We are unique in that we have a really excellent dialed in. We can do multifamily. Gosh, I can't even off the top of my head, minimum 100 kitchens a month, easy. And I think it exceeds that. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not good with that kind of, but at the same time, we've got custom, we have a full countertop shop, and we have a metal shop. Being able to read the market, look at politics, look at where is the economy going to be robust in 2026? Is it going to be multifamily like it was in 2024 and 25? I don't think so. So Energy is giving us that ability to forecast the type of project. And it's just unbelievable. The visibility, the control, the forecasting, the scalability, it's a game changer. Like we absolutely could not have survived if we had not done Energy in the time that we did it.
Amazing. You also mentioned you guys are an EOS shop. You guys have implemented that. And I think a lot of those two things, Energy and EOS, complement each other very well. How has that complemented implementing an ERP system with kind of just the overall transformation and change management of the business?
Traction as a book, strongly recommend. Like I said, I read a lot and it really did bring together and package it up. And EOS is right from that book. And it truly is, whereas Energy is, it's like the gospel and the Bible. Like they just are two different segments or areas of our company, but they're both the best. ERP, Innergy, is about running the company, the cogs, the production, how everything comes together. But the traction in EOS is everything that kind of surrounds it and supports it. So it's almost like the mortar or the grout or the glue or the coordination. And it's hugely about communication. It is the tool that gives us the most efficiency to communicate timely, not excessively, and to keep us aligned and collaborating.
You've talked a lot about how the business has evolved, and I think you came into buying this business with, it seems almost like a very clear mindset and mentality and vision for it. But is there any way that you feel that you as an owner, as a leader, have evolved through this process over the years since you've acquired Top 40?
Oh, it's been rapid growth and learning nonstop. I would actually say my very first takeaway was because someone is an excellent technician, and this goes back to the email, where there's three hats in a company. There's a technician, there's a manager, there's an entrepreneur, a dreamer. Someone being an excellent technician doesn't necessarily make them a good manager. So that was something that when I recognized that someone's like an excellent technician, it's a different skill set. It's a different animal to be a great manager. And that was one of my biggest kind of epiphanies. Aside from that, like I said, the first 2 years was internal restructuring. I didn't put my head outside the door. I didn't want to take Top 40 to market. On the contrary, no thanks, we'll get back to you when we got our internal ducks in a row. But now I feel like we've arrived. And it really started last year and this year, like everything is coming together in such a beautiful way. It centers a lot back to traction in EOS, and it's about communication and working together and understanding clients, understanding the industry, understanding the political forecast. Again, like what is up ahead with tariffs? What is going to happen with housing, with immigration? These affects a millwork company. It affects what kind of work we go for, because the majority of our jobs are a year to 2 years out. So we need to look into the future and start gauging where the market's going to be going and where we need to start building up our resources and our staffing. So it's pretty, there's been so much learning. It's fascinating. It is never boring. It's like reality TV around here. It's super fun, but not for it's very daunting. It's controlled chaos. The construction industry as a whole is deadline driven. Any industry that has deadlines is stressful. There will always be stress. It will never be routine. It will never, if I had bought that door company, it probably would have been less stress. But job sites, there's always hiccups. There's always something. And so that's the other big thing I realized is the type of people that we have working in our company, especially in management, they need to be agile minded. They need to lean into the chaos, embrace it, and start finding patterns, start finding a way to mold it, to work with it. Mountain biking, ride the slide. Like if you start pumping the brakes hard, you're going to go over the handlebars. Like you need to be able to navigate in the chaos and make it work for you. And that's been a really big lesson as well. Oh gosh, there's been so much growth, Jacob, so much that it never stops.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring to hear, even just in your dialogue, how it seems like it's evolved from talking about the past and talking about when the first couple of years, how you didn't poke your head out the door, to now everything I hear you saying about the future. You have the capacity, and everything you're describing is thinking about the future. We're looking towards the future about what is the economy doing, what is happening with tariffs, what is the industry bringing us, and I think that is pretty rare or unique for an owner to be in that position, rather to be bogged down in the today of the problems of today. And you did say, hey, there are problems today, there are headaches, there are things, but you clearly have the capacity now and our position to, as you said, hey, we're ready to take Top 40 of the market, and I'm actually proud to do it. And not only that, I have the space and I'm able to sit here and look out at the future to make sure we're steering the ship towards the best path forward. And you've done the work. Top 40, you guys as a team clearly have done the work to position yourselves to be able to do that. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm taking away from what you're just describing. And I think that is a very, very inspiring position and kind of story for somebody that hopefully are listening, because I know there are so many others that are in a similar position of, hey, I'm acquiring a business from a founder, which in and of itself is a huge transition. But ultimately that's the goal is, hey, how can I build on a very solid foundation and take it somewhere further? And it's exciting and very inspiring to hear the story of how you guys are doing that at Top 40.
Thank you. I want to offer some thoughts to you about the changes in this industry. Again, I've been kicking around these shops for decades, and there's such a reflection on technology. Again, machinery is machinery. And that's one thing, like once upon a time when I was a kid and microwaves showed up, I'm dating myself, or smart TVs, the cost was so expensive. But slowly that comes down and then it becomes normalized. Everyone's got it. I think machinery in millwork shops is becoming quite, automation is becoming quite standard. But at the same time though, the cost of entry into the market is way up here. So entry into the market, I don't think there's going to be as many millwork companies out there because the cost of entry is so high. As you said, the ones that are buying companies already established, it's a pretty tough gig for a guy off the bench to buy a fully automated shop. I just don't think there's going to be as many fully automated shops in the market. And so therefore the ones that are left standing and that are out there, I think now it becomes a game of embracing AI, understanding GC software, things like Procore or Autodesk. Don't run away from that. Learn it, understand thy client. That was always my mantra from day one. Know thy client. That funny, I was thinking 20 years ago, the owner of Top 40 was going down to Vancouver to attend a cabinetware conference or a session. It was a one day. I asked him if I could come. I was just a vendor rep, but I spent a whole day learning cabinetware and understanding it. And that was when I was just a manufacturer rep, because I knew I had to understand exactly what my clients did. That is no different than a millwork shop understanding what GCs do, understanding what developers do. You really need to understand before you can actually intelligently help and be a part of the solution. I think that's what's going to become the differentiator in this new industry, because it's going to be an equal ballpark in terms of automation. It's going to become the service issue, the communication, collaboration, and I don't think it's going to be simply who's got more CNCs or who's got more beam saws or who's got a store automated. I I think it's next gen. It's very much like our global workforce. It is global now. It's not just your city. 30% of our staff is remote. I don't blink at that. I say to them, I don't care where you sit. I don't care when you work. In most occasions, I just care about the work you get done. There is definitely some positions that it is timely. They do need to be doing the work at the same hours, but I think it's just short-sighted not to look at your bigger picture.
I appreciate that. You've shared a good vision of what in the future changing. On the flip side of that, what do you see staying the same and being consistent?
When we were discussing buying Top 40, we had to do a SWOT analysis, right? So China's really, your offshore is really good at building items in our industry at a very competitive, very cheap, right? So what about Top 40? What about commercial millwork that insulates us from that risk? And I think the long and short of it is there's always going to be a footprint in the ground that is going to need millwork custom built to that footprint. dropping it from furniture from a container onto that footprint will never be a custom fit. I think that there will always be a need for custom millwork. If we were a hotel furniture manufacturer, I'd be afraid, because I think that it's offshore competition is very competitive. They can do it for less than we can. So I think it's going to stay the same, that there'll always be custom millwork needed because of the footprint. And I also think that I keep thinking about changes, integrated project delivery systems like that. Sorry, I'm talking about a change now, but this is a new way of bringing projects to market, and they're becoming more prevalent. In talking with a lot of people in our market, it's going to become the new norm. And in that, they're asking trades to step up and be involved earlier in the project and actually be almost like a design build partner. So they're always, consultants, owners are always going to need that subject matter expert from that commercial mill worker. We are it's not if, it's when millwork is going to become a constraint on a project build. The electrical comes through it, the plumbing comes through it. So trying to coordinate the electrical and plumbing with the millwork from offshore, good luck with that. So I do believe that our market is secure. Again, like I said, I would be wary to be doing something that could be replicated offshore.
Awesome. That's a very, I think, concise and clear vision, but I think hopeful. And I think we are seeing a lot of, as you mentioned before, a lot of acquisitions. And I think through that, there will probably be, as you said, less millwork manufacturers, but still a very strong and consistent need for it. I am really grateful for you bringing your perspective, for sharing your story. Like, I think it's extremely motivating, extremely inspiring to so many that are listening. And if anybody is interested in finding out more about Top 40 Woodworks or reaching out to ask any more questions, what's the best way for them to find out more?
You can find us. We have a website that's less than, it seems to be Instagram and LinkedIn. Definitely need to put a little bit more effort in that. My rock from Traction for 2026. But definitely you can find us Top 40, it's a 40, not written, woodworks.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. And yes, thank you so much for coming on it and sharing with everybody.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.